Welcome back to the 6th episode of America Unplugged. I'm your host, Manny. Thanks again for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the last podcast about systemic racism. And today, I want to sort of piggyback off of that, right? I feel that one of the major, if not the major problem in our country, in our society, is the fact that the nuclear family, the traditional family, is being destroyed. I think that's having devastating effects to our younger generations. That's having devastating effects economically. And our society is promoting the actions and activities and the mindsets that further destroy the family. Now, for the record, I sincerely believe that children need both parents in their lives. Yet for whatever reason, we've steered so far from that, and our children are the ones that are paying the consequences. You know, my wife was telling me how she's on this baby forum for any kind of questions that doesn't necessarily warrant a call to her doctor, you know, just general inquiries. We're expecting our third child. This isn't our first rodeo, but there's still questions that pop up here and there. But unfortunately, she says that she runs into some threads where expecting mothers are already planning on breaking it off with their quote-unquote baby daddy. And I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not gonna start attacking these single moms or soon-to-be single moms. The point is that this is what's wrong with our society. People are sleeping around in a culture that's promoting promiscuity, and people are finding or believe that their value, their self-worth, lies in opening themselves up to someone. And then, when the consequences to those actions lead to a child, one or both people find out that they are not prepared for a child, or that the other person isn't fit to be a parent, and they end up taking them to court for child support, or the other parent is completely gone out of the picture, or there's going to be split custody. And even worse, in minority communities, not just minorities, but predominantly in minority communities, people marry the welfare state, marry the government. So you have children, and then the government becomes your husband. You get welfare, cash assistance, food stamps, housing assistance, and for each child that multiplies by X amount of dollars. And that's not including the child support checks. That's what's wrong with our society today. There was a point in time, race aside, where families were tight-knit. Mothers and fathers stayed together. They raised their children together. Yes, in minority communities too. Just look at the traditional African American family back in the early 1900s, even during the times of segregation. Look at how tight-knit they were. Now in African American communities, the single mother rate is, upwards of 70%, if not more? And in minority communities, it's only climbing. There aren't fathers present. And that has a direct impact on our children, on our next generations, because they're only going to mirror what they know. The girls will repeat the steps that they saw from mom. The boys are going to form their own perceptions of what masculinity is. They're going to try to find some type of brotherhood, some type of fatherly figure. And in many of the crime-ridden areas, what do? They join gangs. They start associating with the wrong people. Where was the father? Where was the father to teach these boys how to be men? But no, in today's society, it's perfectly acceptable for kids to be exposed to music that promotes sexual promiscuity, bragging about wet body parts. And for boys, it's a competition to see how much they can get. Priorities completely out of whack. They're too busy valuing the wrong things. And the consequences are insane. But then, of course, the government incentivizes its behavior because the more kids you have, the more money you get. And if you don't want kids, then you have abortion, right? Meanwhile, no one's getting into the grassroots issue of the problem, in that if people were more selective and careful about who they have sex with, the prevalence of STDs and unwanted pregnancies and abortions and broken homes will be significantly less. Everyone's just focusing on the tip of the iceberg and slapping a temporary band-aids instead of getting to the root of the issue, which is cultural. Imagine going back to the times where there weren't family planning methods, there weren't contraceptives. And if you slept with the wrong person and got pregnant, that's it. People were much more selective back then. They waited till marriage. Why? Because marriage isn't just a legally binding contract. Marriage was also an indication that each person was willing to dedicate themselves and their time and their resources to the other person to make a successful relationship and to build a family upon a strong foundation. But that doesn't exist anymore because we're all supposed to be screwing like rabbits rather than improving on ourselves. So guys, let me go ahead and focus on you for a second. I've been there. I remember what it was like to be a teenager, for example, and a young adult for that matter. How the ultimate goal was getting laid. Was I wrong? That shouldn't be your ultimate goal. Stop putting that on a pedestal. What you should be doing, if you're not courting someone to see if they're the right woman for you, you should be improving on yourself, fellas. You should be working on your own endeavors, getting educated, starting a business, becoming successful. I'm just being real with you. This is what you need to hear. If you work on yourself first and focus on yourself first, then the right woman will come. Stop looking for temporary pleasures. Work on yourself first. And be careful who you sleep around with. If she's not wife material, if you're doing it for a quick release, quick pleasure, it's not worth it. Think with your mind, not with the other head. Stop letting that control you. Be careful of who you're willing to have offspring with, continue your lineage with. And women, be careful who you'll open yourself up to. Stop chasing these quote-unquote bad boys because movies and social media told you that's what you should be attracted to. If you're not ready to be a mother, then don't sleep around. Work on yourself first. And then work on finding someone who will be a quality partner. If the dude's a deadbeat, if he's a quote-unquote gangster, a thug, he's not going to stick around. Probably not. Are you going to continue dating boys, or are you going to try to find an actual man to start a life and a family with? Think about that for a second. What's more attractive than a self-sustaining, well-spoken, well-educated entrepreneur type of man for you, ladies? Someone who has values and morals and is faithful. I'm not talking about the nice guys that'll sit there and grovel at your feet. I get it. That's a huge turnoff. I'm not talking about that. What I'm saying is, find yourself a man that has already developed himself, that has already worked on himself, or is at least willing to, that shows promise. Find someone who's willing to grow with you. Find someone who's ambitious, who's disciplined and dedicated. Build upon that together. Stop looking for low-quality people that fell for this lie that you're supposed to follow societal norms. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have children with someone who is going to be no good as a father, and your kids are going to pay for it. And to both sexes, stop being self-indulgent. Stop chasing that feel-good, the one-night stands, the excitement, the exhilaration. Deep inside, you all know that doesn't bring happiness. All of you know that. Stop letting society and today's culture convince you otherwise. Stop listening to the music that promotes that. Do better for yourself. Hold yourself to a higher standard. And hold the person that you're going to be with at a higher standard. Now, for people who don't think that's a big deal, let's talk about fatherless homes for a second, because that is one of the major problems with society today. As I said, I think in the minority communities, fatherless homes are exceptionally high, and in specifically African American communities, it's upwards of 70% or higher. Now, according to the National Fatherhood Initiative, homes that do not have fathers present, fatherless homes, are 4 times at greater risk of being in poverty. Children are more likely to have behavioral problems. For mom and child health, twice the risk of infant mortality. Children without fathers in a home are more likely to go to prison. Children who also do not have a father present are more likely to commit a crime. Girls who do not have a father present at home are 7 times more likely to become pregnant as a teen. Children without their father at home are more likely to face abuse and neglect. They're also more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol. Twice more likely to suffer from obesity, and twice more likely to drop out of high school. 19.7 million children in the US do not have fathers at home. That is the biggest problem that we're facing today. You look at any household, regardless of race. If the dad is present, the children are better off. Yet fatherless homes are what is plaguing the minority communities today. And you wonder why there's so many issues, and then people want to call it systemic racism. Look at yourself first, people. You want change? Start with the man in the mirror. Start with the woman in the mirror. Yeah, I'm quoting Michael Jackson right now. It starts with you and your actions. You can make a change and hold yourself accountable. Stop being self-indulging. Stop chasing temporary pleasures. Think about what's most important in life. Prioritize that and you will be happy. It will be rewarding. Now, ladies, if you have a son at home, understand the importance of having a father figure at home. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. The government isn't a substitute. This whole agenda being pushed that we don't need men isn't a substitute. Your boys need a father figure at home. Someone that they can mirror their behavior. Someone that can provide the discipline and the tough love needed to mold a boy into a man. Dr. William Pollock, Harvard psychologist and author of Real Boys, stated that while divorce, for example, and this isn't even just a single parent where dad's not in the picture, divorce is devastating for both kids, but particularly devastating, especially devastating for boys. Again, because Dr. Pollock says that fathers teach boys how to be men. They provide them guidance, how to manage their emotions, how to deal with violence and aggressiveness. And numerous other professionals, sociologist Peter Carl, Don Eliam, all came up with the same conclusion. That when boys do not have a father figure, a man figure present, and are raised predominantly by females, their moms, or school teachers, they don't act like men when they grow up. They act more like big kids, like children. They're not taught how to be a man. Is that what you want for your sons? I doubt it. You want your sons to be successful, not overgrown children. And for girls, this is also extremely important. If you have daughters, the father in the home, your daughter's father, will show her what qualities to look for in a man. That is arguably the most important male relationship that your daughter will ever have. So if dad's not in the picture, what do you think is going to happen? How do you think that affects your daughter's relationship with other men? As I said, Back to the statistics from the National Fatherhood Initiative. Girls who do not have a father present at home are 7 times more likely to become pregnant as a teen and more likely to face abuse and neglect. Fathers teach boys how to be men, and fathers show girls what to look for in a man when they're older. It's that important. Whoever you consider becoming your partner, you should take very seriously. Stop looking for the one-night stands. Stop looking for that pleasure. If there's a child involved, the consequences are high. And marrying the government isn't going to do a damn thing. Your children are bound to repeat the cycle or worse. Don't be a single mom. Fellas, don't be out of your children's lives. Make it work with your partner. Because the traditional nuclear family is the most important thing for a child's upbringing. You give them the environment, the behavior to model, and the security that is needed for a child to flourish at home. Kids mirror what their parents do and say. So you need to set the example. Otherwise, if you're not even in their lives, don't be surprised when your kids end up doing the same thing or worse. Now, moms, this is going to be a controversial topic, but then again, what isn't controversial in this podcast, right? Don't let society tell you that your value as a person is your economic contribution. What do I mean by that? The feminist movement and many others will tell you that it's more important for you to get a job and work for someone than for you to stay at home and raise your kids. Stay-at-home moms are frowned upon. Apparently, it's viewed as some form of oppression. And that's further from the truth. Now, don't get me wrong. If you as a woman choose to pursue a career, start your own business, more power to you. That's awesome. But don't think that you're obligated to do so because, for whatever reason, being a stay-at-home parent is viewed as wrong. At least society wants us to think that way. You have that choice. Don't let yourself be pressured into one because the other is supposedly a big no-no. You have that choice, and take pride in that, because when you think about it, what's more important in this life than to raise and mold and love the next generation? Your own kids, instead of having someone else do it for you. Don't let anyone pressure you. You have to do what you think is right. Don't think that you have to go work and trade that off from being at home with your kids. You have that choice. So we've moved from one extreme to the other, and our children are paying for it. How are they paying for it? Well, the National Institute of Child and Human Development conducted the largest comprehensive study on this topic. And they concluded that the longer children spent in the first 3 to 5 years of their lives in some kind of child care facility, be it babysitting, be it daycare, be it preschool, that had a negative overall effect on the mother-child relationship. Those kids were also 3 times more likely to have behavioral problems, and there was a tight correlation between traits such as aggression, defiance, and disobedience with those children that spent more hours in childcare. Now, Dr. Jay Belsky, one of the principal investigators for this study, concluded that children who spent more than 30 hours a week in childcare scored higher in things like being more demanding, being more non-compliant, more aggressive, getting into a lot more fights, showing traits of cruelty, meanness, bullying, talking too much, and demanding that their needs be met immediately, impatience, entitlement. Don't think that you have to trade off your time with your kids, especially during those crucial younger years, because society is telling you that that's some form of oppression and that you have to go work. That's nonsense. If you're wondering, well, how do I do that? Well, it's like Thomas Sowell said. one of the first things that you can do to ensure that you're not in poverty so that you can have the option of staying at home with your kids is being with a dedicated partner, being in a marriage, not being a single mom. That right there almost guarantees that you will be in poverty in most cases. So this is how deep this whole feminist movement goes when it comes to frowning upon motherhood and stay-at-home moms. So an article published in the May 1981 issue of Vogue titled New Sanity, Mother's Lib, short for Liberation, by Deborah Mason. Deborah Mason interviewed Dr. Phyllis Chesler, who was arguably one of the first feminist leaders. And she encouraged mothers to be more separate from their children and explore their own individuality. Guys, let me tell you something about parenting. When you become a parent, you make a choice to dedicate your life for someone other than yourself. There is no selfishness when it comes to parenting because your children are the ones who pay for it. Now, don't get me wrong, the children don't have to be the center of your universe every single second of the day. But this whole notion of separating yourself from your kids to explore your own individuality is selfish. In most cases, you made the decision to have children. Therefore, it's your responsibility as a parent to provide for that child, not just with things, your time and attention as well. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. Like I said, parenting is a rewarding job. But this is the origins of the feminist movement. It goes older than that, but this was, for context, back in 1981. That's what they want you to believe, that being a stay-at-home mom is a form of oppression, and dedicating time to your kids is a form of oppression because you need to go explore your own individuality. Now, a survey by Youth Intelligence, this was a few years back, showed that out of the women surveyed, 68% of married and single moms would ditch work to be at home with their kids. And that 2/3 of the women surveyed prefer the domestic life and to raise their kids. But in today's culture, people don't want to say that. People don't want to admit that. Like I said, if you want to be a career woman, if you want to start your own business, that's great. More power to you. But if you have kids, don't trade your kids off for that. I'm not saying you have to pick one or the other, but usually one suffers in pursuit of the other. So either you have to be very good at time management, or one's going to have to take a step back. And if you're also one of those women who believe or that were convinced that you need to work because that's just what people do, then this survey shows otherwise. And apparently, over 2/3 of women feel the same way in this anonymous survey. So why do we continue living these lifestyles where there are a bunch of single moms and there are a bunch of working moms and their kids pay the price? If that's not making anyone happy, it's not making you happy. Your kids suffer. A study conducted by sociologists at Cornell University showed that children who came from houses without parents, be they the parents were divorced, the parents were absent, working too much, those children felt deprived, that they didn't have a family. And in that same study, they also surveyed women who were mothers. And twice the women who participated in the study said that they were discouraged in the workplace after their first child. They didn't want to be in a workplace. They wanted to be at home with their children. They reported being, quote, fed up with the harried, exhausted, chaotic lifestyle, end of quote. And a lot of them realized that after taxes and daycare expenses and the whole nine, they had very little money left. So what's the point? And again, you have this option, or the likelihood of this option, if you do a few things. First of all, be careful with who you choose to be a sexual partner. Be sure that he is dedicated and that he will stick around. Number 2, be sure that that person is a good provider and protector. That he's not some thug or deadbeat, a lazy self-loather. that he's a man, not a pansy, not a wishy-washy pushover. Number 3, aim to have that traditional family. Because if you cover those 3 things, you drastically reduce your likelihood of being in poverty. You drastically reduce the likelihood of you having to rely on some form of childcare because you have to work. And you greatly improve the probability of your children being raised in a stable, loving, supporting environment. Don't get upset at me if you're offended by this. These are statistics. These are numbers. So again, gentlemen, stop trying to sleep around. Work on yourself. Become educated, self-sustaining. Earn money. Be strong. Aim to be a provider and protector. Be careful who you open yourself up to. Don't just sleep around with any woman because she's throwing herself at you. Search for qualities in a woman that you would want in a partner. Because if a child is remotely possible, you need to hold her to that standard. And women, be careful with who you sleep around with. Be careful with who you choose as a partner. Stop letting the media, the music, the movies tell you what qualities you should look for in a man. You should be looking for a guy with strong qualities, educated, ambitious. If he's not there yet, at least he shows promise. He's dedicated. Look for someone who is willing to grow and grow with them. And in the process, you two will create a beautiful family and your kids will be happy. Your family will flourish and you won't open yourself up to all the hardships and all the problems plaguing the minority communities today. Don't fall for the narrative. You know what's right. I can't tell you. Don't let society tell you. You do what you feel is right. All I can do is present you with the statistics and my opinion. My opinion may not be the most popular, but it's what I believe. It's what's been shown to work. I gave you the studies, the resources. It's worked for me personally and for other people I know. Aim for a traditional family. Reduce fatherless homes. Reduce single mom homes. Don't rely on the government. Don't marry the welfare state. Break the vicious cycle. We'll talk about this more in future discussions. Hopefully I can have some people on the podcast that are willing to have these discussions in more of a conversation format. Even if it's a respectable debate, I'm always open to have these conversations. Not just with like-minded people, but people who may have a differing opinion. That's completely fine. But more on this in future episodes. Thank you for listening. This is Manny with America Unplugged, signing out.